Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Neutrality Studies. I'm Pascal Lotta. I'm an associate professor at Kyoto University, and today I have the very special privilege, if not pleasure, to be talking again to Professor Marandi from the University of Tehran. He's in Tehran. He's in Iran right now. Professor Marandi, welcome back.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure.
Well, I'm glad talking to you. I'm glad that we can talk because your country is under attack. It was pretty, in my view, pretty viciously and pretty deceptively attacked on Saturday. We're speaking today on March 3rd. It is Tuesday. Can you tell us how are you? How is it going, and how are you experiencing all the tragedy unfolding?
Well, history as well as I, if not much better. This is the third war that the United States engages in against Iran. In 1980, when Saddam Hussein invaded uh, our country at the behest of both superpowers, the United States increasingly became the driving force behind Saddam Hussein. And the West gave him chemical weapons. They were mostly coming from Germany, the factories that produced them. And they set up their factories across Iraq and slaughtered many people. And just in one instance, they slaughtered 6,500 Kurds in the city of Halabja and the surrounding areas within a couple of minutes. And the U.S. did nothing. And then ultimately, when Saddam was still losing the war, the United States entered the fray. They fought alongside Saddam Hussein. They sunk Iranian naval ships. They destroyed Iranian oil installations. And they downed an Iranian airliner, killing 290 people. Then, more recently, we saw the 12-day war, where the United States, through was being deceptive, pretended to negotiate with Iran. And then afterwards, we saw between rounds 5 and 6 of the negotiations a blitzkrieg attack. And then, of course, this third war that the United States is directly involving itself is another war of choice being carried out for the sake of the Netanyahu regime and the Epstein class that rules over the United States. Excuse me. So, and this is not new, but this war is a major air campaign. The United States has brought literally everything that it can to carry out airstrikes. And since Iran's key military assets are all deep underground and are thus inaccessible to the American regime and the Netanyahu regime, they bomb cities and they bomb civilian infrastructure and homes. They bombed hospitals. Last night I was at Iranian television on a show, and an hour later they bombed Iranian television. The night before, they also bombed Iranian television. The studio that I was in, that I was supposed to go, was bombed the night before. And then last night, I went to a different place, and I don't know where was struck, but they bombed the Iranian National Radio compound, National Radio and Television compound. So they bomb hospitals, they bomb schools. Right now, as you and I are speaking, a funeral procession is taking place in the city of Minab. It's not a very large city. On the first day, American missiles struck an elementary school, killing roughly 165 schoolgirls, and complete indifference in the Western media, the BBC, CNN, everyone else, because these children are worthless to them. And then on that same day, on the first day, they also bombed a gymnasium where young girls were playing basketball, and they murdered the basketball players. Sorry, they were playing volleyball, and they murdered the volleyball players. So after the first day, the Iranians decided to shut down school, all schools. And so schools and universities are closed. I had class yesterday, but since it was closed, I didn't teach. I don't know if we're going to have online courses um, in the days or weeks ahead. But we are during, it is, by the way, during Ramadan. Lots of people are fasting. And in a couple of weeks, a little bit over 2 weeks from now, we have the Iranian New Year. So death and destruction is being rained upon the Iranian people in a war of choice by the Americans during this period. And Tehran at night, we're being bombed. During the day, we're bombed. And they have double um, double tap, I think it's called. I forgot the name. Double tap airstrikes. Yesterday they bombed. Yes, in Ferdowsi Square, one of my friends was there. They struck the square, buildings near the square, and then people rushed to help, rescuers. And as they were rescuing and trying to find survivors, they struck the same place again.
Oh.
So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with two uh, uh, barbaric regimes that have no humanity. But the Iranians are fighting back. We see Iranian missiles striking uh, occupied Palestine. We see Iranians striking U.S. assets in the Persian Gulf, and the U.S. is hurting. 3
Can
U.S. jets were down.
let's go there in 1 second. Just for everybody on the update side, do you know what is the official death toll so far? And in Tehran, is life still are you still able to move around, or is everybody scared and in bunkers or whatnot? How is it working right now in Tehran?
Well, at night, people. Well, let me first say that the government and the Supreme National Security Council, on day one, asked people who did not need to stay in Tehran to leave because the U.S. and Israelis were bombing civilian infrastructure. So, for example, they bombed the central building for emergency services, ambulances. They bombed the central building of the Red Crescent. So these are the monsters that we're dealing with.
These are purely helping services. They're just there to rescue people. It's
Oh, of course. That's the point. That's the point. Just like the double tap attack. The point is but what I was going to say is that last night in Tehran and the night before, you had huge gatherings of people across the city
Mm.
to support the armed forces and to commemorate the martyrdom of Ayatollah Khamenei. And I put these in my clips of these in my Telegram channel, and I posted a couple on my Twitter account. Huge crowds, but not in one place, in different squares across Tehran, both last night and the night before, under airstrikes. And in the images, in some of them, you can see people on the streets as the Israelis are bombing, and as surface to air defenses are working, and people, men and women, stand their ground and denounce the Trump regime and express support for the state and the armed forces. But it's not business as usual. A lot of businesses are closed. Those that are open, I haven't asked, but I'm pretty confident if I go to some of the shops that are open, they probably don't have that many customers. So, the Tehran is less crowded because a lot of people have left, but also because a lot of people, I presume, are staying at home. Government departments are functioning, but at a minimal. to decrease the risk of their colleagues, of government employees being hurt or killed or
Uh,
murdered.
Hey, very brief intermission because I was recently banned from YouTube, and although I'm back, this can happen anytime again. So please consider subscribing not only here, but to my mailing list on Substack. That's pascalotta.substack.com. The link's going to be in the description below. And now back to the video. It's a very horrible situation, of course. But can you then tell me about your assessment of what Iran is doing now? I mean, on the one hand, you have this mighty United States arsenal that's being unleashed upon on Iran, and of course, most of the things that Israel fires at you is also made in the USA, and they're obviously striking in coordination and in together. But Iran now decided to strike back very hard, not only against Israel but against all of the Gulf states. And what can you discern as the strategy being, like whatever you can share with us?
Well, I should also add that alongside slaughtering Iranians, as we speak, the Israeli regime is bombing Lebanon and slaughtering Lebanese civilians.
Yeah.
They're bombing Beirut. They're bombing apartment blocks, bringing them down and crushing people inside and destroying families. And it's being done at a massive pace. And of course, the West looks away and Western media looks away. There's no condemnation of strikes against civilians because that is what the West does. They put aside the mask. They are the barbarians that they have always been, these regimes, for centuries, since the rise of Western empires. And the facade and the pretense that we saw for a few days, the political correctness that we saw for a few decades, that's all gone.
Yeah.
And so it's all out in the open. But right now, the Iranians are hammering Israel, occupied Palestine, with missiles, and it seems that the Israeli regime's air defenses are running out or incapable because almost all Iranian missiles are getting through, and there's no let up. The Iranians are striking volley. They're firing volley after volley. In the Persian Gulf, the Iranians are using a different set of weapons because they don't need those long-range missiles. Right now, they're bombing Tehran as we speak. I don't know if you can hear it, but you may hear it in a couple of seconds if some of the bombs strike close by. So in the Persian Gulf region and the Indian Ocean, the Iranians use shorter range missiles because the Persian Gulf is not very wide and U.S. assets are not very far away. So the underground bases that are used there, they're firing missiles and drones that are very inexpensive for Iran. And also they're all in underground bases, which are not accessible to the United States. So they're striking targets that are linked to the United States in the Persian Gulf region. And so they strike U.S. bases, and the U.S. has taken its soldiers to hotels and other buildings. So the Iranians are striking them in these places as well. And a couple of oil and gas facilities have been damaged, but it's unclear how that happened and who did it. But the Iranians are not allowing oil or gas to leave the Persian Gulf. And as you know, the price of oil and gas has gone up. Although Iran is not destroying any of the tankers or there's no real major damage to any oil and gas facilities. But if there is escalation, I'm pretty certain that that will happen. And the tankers that do try to leave the Persian Gulf, a handful of them tried to leave under U.S. pressure. Iran hit every single one of them. So the other tankers are staying put.
Yeah, so basically they're locked in and nothing coming through. And uh, what are you making out of the Donald Trump said in the very beginning, this unhinged speech of his, that all the Iranian forces need to lay down their weapons, including the police, otherwise they will be all killed, all of them, he said, and that the goal is that the bombing campaign then is supposed to destroy the entire military infrastructure, and then once this is done, the Iranian people should naturally rise up and take over the government and be done with it. I mean, can you can you tell us how realistic that scenario is?
Well, this is unhinged, but the West in general, the political elites have always been unhinged, and they believe their propaganda on Iran. They spend many billions of dollars a year on anti-Iranian propaganda in these hundreds of Persian language media outlets that beam into Iran or can be seen in Iran from the West, whether they're TV channels, satellite TV that we can access all the time, very hostile towards the country, Persian language, and Telegram channels and elaborate websites on news about Iran, full of disinformation, trying to create fear and despair among Iranians. And they have tens of thousands of Iranians on the payroll. I mean, in just one camp in Albania, which I'm sure you know about, the MEK terror organization, they have 3 to 4 thousand people there, and they're just trolls. That's their job. So, I mean, if that's just one small example, and you have all these television stations and websites and other troll farms that are owned by the same people or other terror organizations or the monarchists. So then they put a lot of money into this. And then these people use that money to pay Western politicians, and those Western politicians uh, support them. And then also in parliament or in government, they approve new money. And this reinforces a narrative about Iran because these people say what the West wants to hear, Western regimes and Western elites about Iran, that it's unpopular, that the Islamic Republic is despised, that it's imploding, that it's about to collapse, that it's a house of cards and all that nonsense. And actually, I have this weekly program that I've been doing for, I don't know, 12 weeks or so, I don't know, 3 months or so, on Al Mayadeen television. But my show is in English. My program, it's a monologue. And in the last one that was on last Fridays, the program is called Demystifying Iran. And on the last program, I was speaking about the never-ending narrative of Iran's collapse. And I showed that in the 1980s, in the 1990s, and the beginning of the new century, that the headlines and the articles about Iran in the New York Times, the Washington uh, Post, the Herald Tribune, and all these other outlets, if you remove those headlines or those articles and put them in and publish them now, you couldn't tell the difference. They were
Right.
saying back then it's about to implode. The youth, the youth 30 years ago have turned against the regime, as they like to call it, and it's imploding. Another revolution is emerging. If anyone goes and sees it, just they watch the first 10 minutes. It's quite amusing, and so that narrative is never ending. So they're always based on these uh, uh, fake calculations and these fake narratives. They implement policy, and then their heads hit a brick wall, and they never learn. During the 12-day war, they didn't learn. And now they're talking about what they're going to do in the future in Iran, whether the Americans will have something to do with running the country and all that. All these fake assumptions, and they will fail without a doubt. Iran will view them at a great price to the Iranian people, but we have no choice. It was an imposed war of aggression. But Iran will impose a strategic defeat upon Trump and the Netanyahu regimes.
Are you worried that Israel might use nuclear weapons against Iran?
I don't think that the world will accept that. I think that that will be a bridge too far. The world already despises the Israeli regime, and the world despises the Trump regime. I think even in countries which are allies of the United States, many people, ordinary people, recognize the true essence of these regimes. But across the world, it's growing increasingly hostile. And I don't think Russia and China and others will tolerate that. But if they do, they cannot destroy Iran with a few nuclear weapons. But Iran then will. Uh, we've been told before that if there is an existential threat to the country, an existential threat, then Iran will change its nuclear posture. Iran does not want nuclear weapons. It has refrained from producing them. Just like during the war when the West gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons, Iran refrained from producing chemical weapons. There was a fatwa back then because chemical weapons were inhumane, and there's a fatwa now about nuclear weapons. The IAEA has said that there's never been any indication that Iran was moving towards a nuclear weapon at any point. The American intelligence admits, at least since 2003, there was never such a move. But we have heard from an advisor to the leader over the last year twice, Dr. Kharazi, who was the who was a foreign minister of the Khatami administration for 8 years. As an advisor to the leader, he said twice that Iran will change its nuclear posture if there's an existential threat. And Dr. Larijani, when he was an advisor to the leader, the Dr. Larijani, who is now the chair of the Supreme National Security Council and a very, very important figure now, he too said that if there is an existential threat, Iran will change its nuclear posture. So
So
hopefully, I mean, but the very fact that you asked this question and the very fact that so many other people are asking this question shows how barbaric the Israeli regime is that people can even contemplate such a thing. And it shows how barbaric Western regimes are and how Western media is so captured by the Epstein class that they blame the victims all the time. And they never blame the Israeli regime for genocide, for aggression, and they don't raise these sort of questions. They look away because their journalists are not real journalists. Their journalists are their employees of the Epstein class.
no, it's absolutely insane. I mean, when the full scale war with Ukraine happened, the special military operation, the entire West was screaming bloody murder because it was a nuclear weapon state that attacked a non-nuclear weapon state, and this time it's two nuclear weapon state, not one but two, which in coalition together attack a non-nuclear weapon state that has been saying I don't want nuclear weapons, and the other side accuses it of wanting it. They've been saying for 30 years we don't want them. They're not producing them, but that's the ridiculousness within that we are moving in. But the may I just like ask again to understand you correctly? I mean, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, was killed on Sunday, and are you saying that that is not yet? I mean, to Iran, that is not yet an existential threat. I mean, you're not perceiving it on that level yet. So you're still operating within Iran. Still operates within a different set of assumptions about how to conduct a war.
Well, first of all, he is the most important uh, religious leader in the Shia world, and his he has the most following among Shias across the world. And we have others also like Ayatollah Sistani, Ayatollah Makarem Shirazi, and others who have also many followers, but who've also support him and who've also are all outraged. So the entire Shia world is up in arms, and his credibility among Sunni Muslims has risen dramatically because he is the only person who's defending the Palestinian people. He's the only leader. No one else is doing this. And Shia countries and axis of resistance, they're the only ones who are making sacrifices to stop the genocide in Gaza, whether it's in Yemen or whether it's in Lebanon. Lebanon has made enormous sacrifices, the resistance there. Thousands of men, women, and children have been slaughtered by the Israelis in this small country, many thousands. And so Sunnis across the world see through the Qatari, Saudi, Erdogan, UAE propaganda increasingly. They've been trying to demonize Iran and the Shias and create a divide for decades through slander, through uh, this information for many decades because they're all in the American camp. I mean, as we speak, they all host U.S. bases. Turkey is transporting oil to Israel, to the Israeli regime. And AWACS, NATO AWACS jets are flying over Turkey to help gather information on Iran. American bases in Turkey are being used. In Jordan, the bases are being used in Turkey. The radar is being used in Jordan. There are U.S. aircraft in Saudi Arabia. Uh, there are huge numbers of U.S. aircraft in Saudi air bases. So they see across this Islamic world that this propaganda that has been going on for almost 5 decades now has all been based on lies, and that the only people who are sacrificing for Sunnis, Palestinian Sunnis, is the axis of resistance. But it goes far further than that, because the Iranians have always been supporting the oppressed. That's a part of their religious ideology, especially as Shias. They have a special ideological vision, and they support the oppressed. So they support Cuba. They support Venezuela. They supported the resistance in Southern Africa against apartheid. And so across the global South, not so much in the West, but across the global South, many people who've been seeking liberation view Iran very differently from the way the West has presented it. And over the past 2.5 ever since October the 7th, Iran's image has been, and their axis has been growing across the global South. And now, during these days, they see that Iran is refusing to submit. So Iran's stature is growing across the world and across the region. And this, I think, is very bad news for the United States. The empire is part of its success is to project power. But when it's viewed as incapable, despite mobilizing its regional proxies that I just explained, the family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, Jordan, Erdogan, and others, and then the entire Western camp on the side of Trump, supporting this aggression and supporting this joint slaughter being carried out by the Trump and Netanyahu regimes, people see that Iran is fighting back, and the axis of resistance is fighting back. So this is breaking the image of the United States. And on the other hand, the Iranians have closed, as I said earlier, the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing that the Americans can do about it. And we have to keep in mind, and you live in a technologically advanced country, AI is the future battle, the last hope of the U.S. economy, because it's been deindustrialized. So they're focusing on AI. Iran is driving the price of oil and gas up. And the United States is desperate to succeed in AI. So if the Americans escalate, the Iranians can tighten the screw, and they can drive oil and gas prices through the roof. So I think that the Americans are in a very bad situation. They're carrying out atrocities 24 hours a day, no doubt. The Iranians are hurting, but the country is united. Again, if anyone goes to my Telegram channel or my Twitter account and see the images of people on the streets in Tehran and across the country every night, they'll be amazed, under fire, because the Americans are not just bombing Tehran. They're bombing hundreds of cities. And they're bombing, as I said, schools, hospitals, police stations, local police stations. They're trying to destroy civil society. They're trying to destroy the structures of society.
It seems to be pretty clear to me that the number one objective of the United States is to try to get its regime change, but short of regime change, they will try to carpet bomb Iran in a way that its social fabric then falls into civil strife. That's also why they target the police forces and why they need to target the civil infrastructure of the civilian administration in these different places, because you need to foment a place where then the whole country can fall into civil war, right? That's the second best
So that's
outcome
why
for
they
them.
bomb emergency services, so people cannot call for ambulances.
So
Or they,
what?
they,
What is the counter strategy of Iran now? I mean, what would be a scenario under which Iran would say, okay, now we repelled them? I mean, if the US and Iran become physically unable to fire or unwilling to fire, what's the point where Iran would say, okay, fine, we did it. I mean, this is done from our side. Like, what would be the place?
well, that is complicated, and there's no clear um scenario in my mind that can play out in many different ways. But ultimately, the Americans are going to have to back down. And we saw that sort of in Yemen. Remember the 7-week war where the United States was going to defeat Yemen and Ansar Allah, what they like to call the Houthis. And then at the end, Trump announced his victory and walked away. And he said that they capitulated, but they didn't. And so Yemen won. And after 7 weeks of war and damage to the world economy and the U.S. economy. But Yemen won the war, but there was no, it was no it was just the Americans giving up. After a period of time, the Americans are going to have to give up. They're having casualties. Their economies, their armed forces are paying a huge price. I mean, every time they bomb Iranian cities, since they're afraid of Iranian missiles and drones, their planes, their jets are very far away. So they don't fly over Iran. They fire missiles at Iran. So, but in order to do so, they have to be refueled when they come towards Iran and refueled again as they go back. So the flights are very long. These are not good for the jets, and the fuel is very expensive. And of course, the missiles are expensive, and they're being depleted as we speak. And the United States, not being an industrialized country like China or having a military industry like Russia, these missiles are very expensive to make in the United States. Iran fires a drone at a U.S. base. The U.S. fires anti uh, drone missiles. The Iranian drone costs like a few $1,000s. American missile costs a few $100,000. So, and then of course the price of energy is going up. So you have all of these things playing out. This is not going to end well, especially as Trump already being so unpopular. You have the Epstein files. You have the deep divisions in the United States. Unlike previous wars where the Western media would just lie openly and Western leaders would lie open and most people would believe them and they would support the war like in Iraq. Here, despite the lies, we saw Witkoff claim that in 10 days Iran would make a nuclear weapon, or Vance saying more or less the same, Trump talking about Iran making missiles to strike the United States. All these lies that we heard in 2003 or in 2002. In 2002 and 2003, they were able to mobilize American society. Like in other wars, the West is good at mobilizing the naive people of the West. But now that this trust towards Western regimes and Western media is so great that even though in the West there's the disinformation on Iran is effective, and people have more overwhelmingly have very negative and bizarre views about Iran that are not rooted in reality, was chased basically Western media from the Guardian to Fox News, from Breitbart to the Independent. They're all the same when it comes to Iran. We saw in Congress when Trump made his State of the Union, the only place where all the SEALs got up together and clapped, Democrat and Republican, was when he was attacking Iran. So the the United States has not been able to convince the American public, and the world is more or less outraged, except for pockets of support, maybe in India and in some quarters in Europe. People are seeing through this, so it's going to be very hard for the United States, for Trump, and the ruling class, the ruling Epstein class in the United States, to sustain this for very long, because the hardship that will be and the different pain that is being inflicted, people are seeing as it being done for the sake of the Israeli regime, not for the
Very
sake of the American people.
right. And very last question, because I know there's tons of things to do on your plate on your desk, but the collaboration with, or the collaboration, the interactions with Russia and China, how do you see those? Are they increasing? Are you hearing anything? Are others helping? Are you receiving humanitarian aid from them?
Ever since the 12-day war, the liberals in Iran, their argument that we should try to build bridges with the West has been melting away very fast. And now I think there's a consensus. The West can pretend that Iranians support them, that those rioters represented Iranian society. They can say that all they want. They can pound their heads against a brick wall all they want. It's fine. They'll kill people, which they don't care, but they'll pay a price too. The Iranians are united against the United States and the West. And now that they've seen that every time they negotiate, the United States tries to deceive Iran. This was not fooled this time at all, but he was prepared. But Ayatollah Khomeini stayed at his residence, and he stayed and worked in his office because he chose to do so. He was not afraid. And when they asked to move him, he said, a lot of people cannot have nowhere to go except for where they are in their homes. And so I'm not going anywhere either. So he knew the risks, but he was steadfast. And that has made him even more heroic among ordinary Iranians. And his wife was martyred. His son-in-law was martyred. His daughter was martyred. His granddaughter was martyred. But the rest of the military and political establishment was much less affected than during the 12-day war. So Iran is united. And the United States, that is, I think, the ultimate defeat for the United States and the Israeli regime. The Iranian key military assets are well protected. They're deep underground. As I said earlier, the Iranians have been preparing themselves for an attack from the United States for decades. Or I may not have said this before, but ever since invasion of Iraq, the Iranians have been building underground bases across the Persian Gulf region and so on, because they named Iran as the axis of evil and started saying all options on the table, Bush, Obama, and so on. So Iran has been preparing itself. This is not a scenario through which Americans can attain victory. They can slaughter Iranians, but this will end in failure. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I don't know if I was actually answering your question.
The question was it was if Russia and China, if there's any kind of help coming from them.
Yes, right. So the liberals have lost the argument, and many have tilted away. And as I said, those rioters don't represent the Iranian public opinion. They're a small segment of Iranian society, and many of them now regret what they did because they see what the United States is doing to Iran. But and so the argument now is that we should focus more on friendly countries, those countries that are not attacking us. And so the consensus in Iran has been created partially thanks to Trump and to the regime in Washington and the Israeli regime. And so relations with Russia and China are improved. And I think in the coming years that those bonds will strengthen further.
Right. What a lot of people get wrong is that Iran is very diverse society and has many different opinions, but this war is now channeling these opinions into really the avenues that are still possible. Professor Marandi, thank you very much for your time today, and please stay safe. I'm not a faithful person, or I'm not a great believer. But if there's anything close to it, then I would say like I'm praying for you and everybody in the entire region to be safe. So I will put also the link to your X profile into the description of this video. Everybody, please go and look at the updates from Professor Mohammad Marandi. Professor, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. As General Soleimani once famously said, we are the nation of Imam Hussein. And if American analysts and politicians and military officials had read a bit about uh, the story of Karbala and the impact it has on Iranian society, and the grandson of the Prophet, and how deeply embedded it is in Iran's religious ideology, support for the oppressed, and defiance against the oppressor, they would have thought twice about attacking Iran. But hopefully, despite the fact that the days are dark for Lebanon, for Iranians, for people across the region, and for people across the globe, because people across the globe are outraged and they're deeply disturbed by what the West is doing. And of course, Gaza, Gaza, Gaza. But hopefully, despite the darkness, uh, the sun will be shining upon humanity in future, and the empire will collapse, and we'll all see, those who survive will see better days.
The sun will rise again. Professor Marandi, thank you.